Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. The afternoon sun slanted through the blinds, painting stripes across my living room rug. It was one of those quiet Tuesdays where the loudest sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, a sound that usually soothed me, but today felt like it was marking time I wasn't quite sure what to do with. My kids are grown and scattered across the country, and since Richard passed 3 years ago, the house often felt too big, too quiet. I'd just finished my lukewarm tea and was debating whether to tackle the rose bushes or succumb to a nap when I heard the familiar rumble of Carol Harrison's SUV next door. Carol and Tom were good neighbors, the kind you could rely on for a cup of sugar or to keep an eye on the place when you were away. I knew their youngest, Liam, was visiting. He was in his late 20s, I guessed, a software engineer living somewhere on the West Coast. I'd seen him around during holidays over the years, a polite but quiet young man, always seemed a bit lost in his own world. Later that evening, the neighborhood association was hosting its annual summer potluck down at the community park. Usually, I'd bring my famous potato salad, make small talk for an hour, and head home. It was part of the suburban ritual. Tonight felt different, though. Maybe it was the lingering quiet of the afternoon, or maybe just the desire for some human connection that wasn't filtered through a phone screen. I decided to go. The park was buzzing with activity. Kids shrieking on the playground, adults gathered around picnic tables laden with food, the air thick with the smell of barbecue and citronella. I found a spot on a slightly less crowded bench, near the edge of the main gathering, under the shade of a large oak tree. I just settled my plate of pasta salad and a burger on my lap when a shadow fell over me. Mind if I join you? Everywhere else seems pretty packed. It was Liam Harrison. He gestured vaguely towards the crowded tables with a small, almost shy smile. Not at all, I said, shifting over slightly. Plenty of room. He sat down, balancing his own plate carefully. He wasn't the gangly teenager I vaguely remembered. He'd filled out, his shoulders broad beneath a simple gray t-shirt. There were faint lines around his eyes when he smiled, eyes that were a surprising shade of green, like moss after rain. We sat in silence for a few moments, the comfortable kind, listening to the cheerful chaos around us. I noticed his hands, long fingers, clean nails, the kind of hands that looked like they knew their way around a keyboard, but also maybe a guitar. He caught me looking and tucked them under his thighs, a slight flush creeping up his neck. It was endearing. Your mom's macaroni and cheese is legendary, I offered, breaking the silence. He laughed, a nice sound, low and genuine. Yeah, she guards that recipe like it's a state secret. I've been trying to get it out of her for years. Some secrets are best kept, I smiled. Adds to the mystique. He nodded, taking a bite of the mac and cheese. So, he began, after swallowing, you're Sarah, right? My folks mention you. That's me, I confirmed. And you're Liam. The prodigal son returns. He chuckled again. Something like that. Just needed a break from the city grind. Thought some time back home, some of Mom's cooking, might do the trick. There was a weariness in his voice that hadn't been there moments before, a subtle weight that pulled at the corners of his smile. It was unexpected, that little glimpse beneath the polite surface. We talked easily after that. Not about anything profound, really. We talked about the neighborhood, how it had changed, the ridiculousness of the homeowners association's new rules about lawn ornaments. He told me a funny story about his cat back in Seattle, and I shared an anecdote about my daughter's recent disastrous attempt at baking. It was simple, uncomplicated conversation, yet underneath it, I felt a strange current. It wasn't flirtatious, not in the traditional sense. It was recognition, a sense of seeing someone, and perhaps being seen, in a way that felt unfamiliar but not unwelcome. He didn't look at me like I was just his parents' neighbor, a middle-aged woman filling time at a potluck. He looked at me like I was a person, interesting and engaging in my own right. And maybe I looked at him differently too, not just as Carol's boy, but as a thoughtful man with kind eyes and a quiet depth. The sun began to dip lower, casting long shadows across the grass, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The crowd started to thin as families packed up coolers and herded tired children home. Liam made no move to leave, and neither did I. He started talking about his job, the pressure, the feeling of being a small cog in a giant machine. It wasn't a complaint, more of a quiet musing. "Sometimes I wonder what it's all for, he said, looking out towards the darkening playground. "You build these complex systems, these intricate lines of code, but does it actually matter?" It was a question I'd often asked myself, especially in the quiet hours since Richard was gone. What was the point of the neatly folded laundry, the meticulously weeded garden, the perfectly balanced checkbook? "I think," I said slowly, choosing my words carefully, "that finding meaning is less about the grand scale and more about the small connections. The code you write connects people, helps them communicate, learn, maybe even just escape for a little while. That matters." He turned to look at me, his green eyes searching mine in the fading light. "You think so?" "I do," I affirmed, "just like this conversation. It's not changing the world, but perhaps it's making this little corner of it feel a bit less lonely for a moment." "That matters too." A slow smile spread across his face, reaching his eyes this time. "Yeah," he breathed out. "Yeah, I guess it does." We sat there as dusk settled completely, the first stars beginning to prick the twilight sky. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of cut grass and damp earth. The easy silence returned, but this time it felt charged, filled with unspoken understanding. It was the feeling of finding an unexpected harbor in a quiet conversation under an old oak tree. The next few days passed in a pleasant, slightly altered rhythm. I saw Liam around, walking his parents' ancient golden retriever, fiddling with the engine of his dad's old pickup truck, or just sitting on their porch swing with a laptop. We'd exchange waves, sometimes chat for a few minutes over the fence about the weather or the stubborn crabgrass invading my flower beds. Each small interaction felt like adding another brushstroke to a painting I hadn't known I was creating. There was an ease between us, a lack of pretense that was refreshing. One sweltering afternoon, I was struggling with a heavy bag of mulch in my front yard, the plastic digging painfully into my fingers. Suddenly, Liam was there, jogging across the lawn. "Need a hand with that, Sarah?" he asked, already reaching for the bag. "Oh, Liam, thank you." "This stuff weighs a ton," I puffed, grateful. He lifted it easily, carrying it over to the rose bushes I was working on. "No problem at all. Looks like you're putting in some serious work here." "Trying to," I sighed, wiping a bead of sweat from my forehead. "These roses are needier than my kids were as toddlers." He laughed, setting the mulch down gently. "My mom says the same thing about her azaleas." He lingered, leaning against the oak tree that shaded my yard. "Actually," he said, looking down at his hands, then back up at me, "I was wondering. I'm trying to troubleshoot a weird bug in this personal project I'm working on, and honestly, talking it through sometimes helps. My parents' eyes just glaze over when I mention code. Would you? I mean, you don't have to, but would you mind just listening for a bit? Sometimes just explaining it out loud makes the solution appear." I was surprised, but also touched. "I know absolutely nothing about code, Liam," I warned him, smiling. "But I'm a very good listener. Pull up some lawn." He grabbed one of the plastic Adirondack chairs from my porch and sat opposite me under the tree's dappled shade. He opened his laptop, the screen casting a faint glow on his face. He started explaining, using analogies I could understand, comparing lines of code to recipes, functions to specific kitchen tools. He spoke passionately, his initial shyness replaced by focused enthusiasm. I didn't understand the technical details, of course, but I understood the frustration in his voice when he described the glitch, the intellectual challenge he was grappling with. I listened intently, asking occasional, probably naive, questions, trying to follow the logic he laid out. He never made me feel stupid for not getting it. He just patiently rephrased or found a different analogy. After about 20 minutes, he suddenly stopped, looked at his screen, typed furiously for a moment, and then leaned back with a sigh of relief. Wait a second. I think, yes, that's it. Talking about the user input sequence, you asking why it needed that specific validation right asterisk there asterisk. It made me realize I'd put it in the wrong module entirely. He looked up at me, a wide, incredulous grin spreading across his face. Sarah, you're a genius. I laughed, shaking my head. Hardly. I just asked a question. No, but you listened, he insisted, his eyes bright. Really listened. Nobody does that anymore, not really. Everyone's just waiting for their turn to talk or checking their phone. He closed the laptop. Thank you. Seriously. Any time, I said sincerely. Though I can't promise I'll have any useful input next time. Just listening is useful, he repeated softly. We sat there for a while longer, the earlier ease returning, deepened now by this shared moment of problem-solving, however one-sided the actual solving might have been. He started asking me about my life before Richard, my career in library archiving, a part of my life I rarely spoke about anymore. He seemed genuinely interested, asking thoughtful questions. I found myself opening up, sharing stories I hadn't thought about in years, remembering the satisfaction of preserving fragile historical documents, the quiet hum of the research rooms. It felt good to revisit that part of myself, to see it reflected in someone else's interested gaze. The afternoon shadows lengthened, and the heat began to soften. There was a comfortable intimacy in our conversation, a quiet sharing under the shade of the old tree. It felt like uncovering layers, not just in each other, but within ourselves. A couple of evenings later, Carol mentioned they were planning a small barbecue, just family, before Liam headed back to Seattle in a few days. You should absolutely come, Sarah, she insisted. Keep us old folks company while Liam talks about algorithms or whatever it is he does. I hesitated for only a second before accepting. The thought of spending another evening in Liam's quiet, thoughtful company was surprisingly appealing. The barbecue was relaxed, just Carol, Tom, Liam, and me on their back deck. Tom grilled burgers, Carol fussed over the side dishes, and Liam seemed more relaxed than I'd seen him, laughing easily at his dad's terrible jokes. As twilight deepened, Tom and Carol went inside to tidy up, leaving Liam and me alone on the deck, nursing our drinks. The tiki torches cast flickering shadows, and the scent of grilled food mingled with the sweet fragrance of Carol's night-blooming jasmine. You know, Liam said, breaking the comfortable silence, that conversation we had the other day under your tree. I nodded, looking out at the fireflies starting to blink in the yard. It meant a lot, he continued, his voice low. It's been a weird couple of years for me. Work, life, everything felt kind of hollow. Coming back here, I didn't expect much beyond nostalgia and decent food. He paused, swirling the ice in his glass. But talking with you, it's different. You don't try to fix things or offer platitudes. You just listen, and you see things. I turned to look at him. His profile was etched against the soft glow from the house, his expression serious, vulnerable. Maybe it's because I'm at a point in my life where I appreciate genuine connection more than easy answers, I said softly. Life teaches you that the platitudes wear thin pretty quickly. He met my gaze, his green eyes seeming very deep in the torchlight. You make things feel less hollow. The air between us felt suddenly charged, thick with unspoken emotion. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was potent. It was the culmination of shared glances, quiet conversations, unexpected moments of understanding. There was a magnetic pull, a recognition of shared loneliness, perhaps, or simply a profound, unexpected empathy. He leaned forward slightly, his hand resting on the armrest between us. I could feel the warmth radiating from him. My heart was beating a little faster, a forgotten rhythm. This was uncharted territory. He was my neighbor's son. I was old enough to be, well, significantly older, yet the connection felt real, untainted by those labels, existing purely in the space between us under the jasmine-scented sky. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. He didn't move any closer, didn't break the gaze. His eyes held a question, but also a deep respect. It wasn't the predatory look you sometimes got from men, regardless of age. It was open, uncertain, almost reverent. In that moment, I felt seen not as a widow, a neighbor, or an older woman, but as Sarah, a person with her own history, her own quiet strength, her own capacity for connection. He reached out very slowly, and his fingertips brushed against the back of my hand resting on the chair arm. It wasn't a caress, not quite. It was a point of contact, electric and grounding all at once. A spark, faint but definite, jumped between us. My breath hitched. I didn't pull away. I couldn't. His touch lingered for just a heartbeat, a silent acknowledgement of the energy flowing between us. Then just as slowly he withdrew his hand, his gaze dropping for a second before meeting mine again. A faint smile touched his lips, tinged with a little sadness. "My flight's on Saturday," he said softly, the words hanging in the air. Reality intruded, gentle but firm. This connection, intense and unexpected as it was, existed within the framework of our separate lives. He lived across the country, belonged to a different generation, his path stretching out before him, while mine felt more settled, quieter. "I know," I replied, my voice equally quiet. There was no need for more words. The moment itself, that brief touch, the shared look, was the climax, an emotional peak defined by its restraint, its unspoken depth, its mutual respect. It wasn't about pursuing something impossible or inappropriate. It was about acknowledging the beauty of a connection found in the most unexpected of circumstances. It was a shared secret held in the space between two people on a warm summer night. We sat in silence for a few more minutes, the intensity slowly receding, replaced by a warm, bittersweet calm. When Carol and Tom came back out, the spell was broken, but the memory of it remained, imprinted on the evening air. Liam left 2 days later. We said goodbye politely at his parents' driveway. A simple handshake, a shared look that held the weight of our unspoken moments. "Thank you, Sarah," he said, "for everything." "Safe travels, Liam," I replied. "Don't be a stranger to your folks." As his car disappeared down the street, I didn't feel sad exactly. Instead, I felt richer.